Hello, my name is Peter Adams, and I was an English teacher at the Community College of Baltimore County for 36 years until I retired 3 or 4 years ago. My colleagues and I at the Community College of Baltimore County developed a program, a new model really for teaching developmental writing at our school. We called it the Accelerated Learning Program, or ALP for short. And in this presentation, I'm going to give you some information, sort of an overview of the ALP program. Next. So what we're going to do today, next, is first describe the problem that the ALP program, or the COREC program, was designed to address. And then I'm going to explain how the program, how ALP itself works, next. And then I'll present some data, some results on how it worked. And then I'll tell you a little bit about other options besides ALP that are also COREC options. And finally, I'll talk for just a slide or two about the costs of ALP. So let's get started. We're going to talk about the problem that CORECs were designed to address. Back in 1993, the Community College of Baltimore County, in all of its wisdom, bought the English department its first computer, a very powerful Apple IIe. And we used that computer to develop a database into which we put every student who took the assessment. At that time, it was a paper and pencil test called the Test of Standard Written English, which later turned into Accuplacer. Every student's TSWE score went into the computer along with their student ID, and then their grades in every English course that they attempted. And we kept that information for 4 years and followed students. So we had a little mini transcript for every student. The ones we chose to focus on were all the students who took our developmental English course, English 052, in the academic year 1988-89. And there were 863 of those students, and we followed them for 4 years. And what we discovered was that out of the 863, 490 actually passed English 052, the developmental course. That was 57%, which of course means that, next, that 43% didn't pass. 373 never passed. Now, of those that passed, they didn't all pass it on their first attempt. Many of them took 2 and even 3 attempts before they passed the course. But within the next 4 years, 57% passed the developmental writing course. But of course, we also wanted to know of those students who passed the developmental writing course, how did they do in English 101, the first year composition course. And here's what we discovered. 81%, a whopping 81% of the students who passed the developmental course and took English 101 passed it, which means only, I think it's 19%, there it is, 19% didn't pass it. So we were just elated. This made, we felt like we must have a pretty good, 81% pass rate was higher than the pass rate for students placed directly into English 101. So for a few weeks, we felt really good about our results. But then I started thinking about it. And one of the things I thought about was that every June when I would go to graduation, I hardly ever saw any of my students walk across the stage. And I began to think maybe that 81% is somehow a distortion. And then I started thinking about, well, how could we get it even higher? How could we get 81% up to 90 or 99% of students? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that all we had to do was fail a lot more students in the developmental course. If we only let the top 1 or 2 students every semester actually pass, we could get our pass rate in English 101 up to 100%. But of course, that would be 100% of just those few students who got through the pipeline. And then I realized the problem with this analysis. It sent us to take, using the same database, the same 863 students, to analyzing the data in a very different way. So here's that analysis. Same 863 students. They all took English 052, our developmental writing course, and the same 57% passed, the same 43% didn't pass. And now, here's the new information we got. Next, one more time, Elizabeth. There it is. What we discovered that is of the 490 students who passed English 052, only 355 of them ever attempted English 101. 135, the ones in the red block, 16%, never even attempted English 101. They dropped out of the pipeline at that point. And then, if we look at English 101, we discovered that the whopping 81% that we thought was our pass rate is actually just, if you could click again, is actually just 33%. Why is it? What happened? Well, the 81% was 81% of the students who made it through this long pipeline. And so 81% of those who attempted 101 passed it. But that was only 33% of the original group, of the original 863. And then we began to realize that what we had been so proud of a few weeks earlier was actually a sort of humiliation. We were just mortified in 1993 when we discovered this very, very low pass rate, which meant in effect 2/3 of the students who we placed in our developmental writing course never passed English 101, and of course never graduated from or received an AA degree or certificate. That was sort of the kind of information that calls for some soul searching. What we tried to do was try to figure out why was our pass rate, our success rate, so low. Next slide, please. And the question we realized that what we were seeing was a problem with dropping out. And so we began to ask the question, why do so many students drop out? And a group of us, there were half a dozen or so of us English teachers, sat down around my dining room table one afternoon and brainstormed. Here's the kinds of things we came up with. They couldn't write a thesis. They used sentence fragments. They didn't use concrete examples and so forth. Click a few more. There we go. And when we asked students, we got some students into a focus group and asked them the same question. Why did so many students drop out of the developmental to writing program leading to English 101? And here's what they told us. None of those things that we said. Instead, it was things like this. The students had financial problems, legal problems, changes at work, car trouble, abusive situations. Their kids got sick, they got evicted, they lost their jobs, they got laid off. All the kinds of things that we summed up as life issues. But then there was a second group of things they told us about, and here they are. This is the most important one, the one we hear most frequently. Students come in to our school and tell us, I'm just not sure I'm college material. And I just wonder sometimes, whoever told them there was such a thing? It's I think a really harmful concept that some people are and some people are not college material. And it really, really undercuts their confidence. And of course, when they arrive, we give them, in my school, we give them the nasty acuplacer. And so the message they get from us is, oh, we're not so sure you're college material either. And so we really just double down on the undercutting of their self-confidence. But click a few more. There we go. Students lose confidence. They become depressed, isolated, stressed. And this group of things, which are more, the first group were life issues that are going on in their outside lives. These issues are going on more in their psyches, in their minds. And we've lumped them under the title affective issues. Next slide. And so if you take life issues and add to it affective issues, the term we use for the combination is non-cognitive issues. And I will use that term several times in the rest of this presentation. So I wanted to explain it to you. The next thing we discovered that there was a second reason that we were having such a low success rate. And to explain this thing, we developed what we call a thought experiment. So I'll ask you in the audience to just sort of think along with me. Imagine you have a credit course. It could be a developmental writing course or math or reading. And in that course, imagine that only 50% of the students who take it pass. Next slide. And so our pass rate is 50%, and we say, oh, we'd like it to be a lot higher than that, but that's not good enough. And so as traditional teachers, we think, what can we do? What can we do to fix that? Well, we could take those students and put them in a developmental course. Click. Yeah. And so if we devise a developmental course and put students in it, and let's say that we get the pass rate in the developmental course to be 75%. And then of those students who pass the developmental course, 75% take the credit course. And of those students that take the credit course, 75% pass. What did we do to our pass rate? We lowered it from 50% to 42%. That's the irony of the developmental pipeline. Is that the longer you make the pipeline, the more likely it is, the lower your success rate will be. In trying to increase our success rate, which originally was 50%, by requiring a developmental course, we lowered it to 42%, and we added an extra semester of coursework and tuition, of course, for all those students. So then we knew that the problems were two. One was the non-cognitive issues, and the other was these that the pipeline was too long. So the next thing I'd like to talk about with you was what the model was that we developed to address those two problems. In other words, how does ALP work? So if a young student arrives on our campus and is assessed and told she needs English, or needs a developmental course, if she wants to, though, we say she can elect the ALP route instead. And if she elects that, then she goes into English 101 directly, and she's joined by 9 other students, 9 other developmental students, all in the credit course, English 101, and they're joined by 10 additional students who are English 101 level students. They're placed directly into comp. And then those 20 students, our class size for all of our writing courses at our school is 20. We're really lucky with that. And they, of course, also are joined by an instructor. In the same semester, usually in the hour immediately following the hour that they sign up for English 101, our little red-capped developmental student signs up for a section of an ALP version of our developmental course. And then she's joined by the same 9 other students and the same instructor. Now, what this means is that those 10 students are spending 6 hours a week together, half that time in a very small section, and all that time with the same instructor. It means that they bond together in a way that they don't when they're only taking one class and then splitting into various different classes for the rest of their schedule. It means that that instructor gets to know them really well. It means that they're starting the semester out in English 101. They're not being kept from English 101. They take their English 101, and then they're taking the developmental work alongside it to support them in the English 101 class. And one of the things that we discover is that it changes their attitude towards the developmental course almost completely. Everyone probably is familiar with the amount of resistance we get from students about developmental coursework. Why do I have to take this? Why don't I get credit if I have to pay tuition for it, and so forth? Well, a lot of that occurs because they see the course as an obstacle, keeping them away from the course that they want to be in, English 101. Now it no longer is an obstacle. They're taking the developmental course at the same time they're taking English 101. It's not keeping them out of English 101. Instead, it's helping them with English 101. Now, we always thought our developmental courses were helping them get ready for English 101, but I don't think they really believed it. Their experience with education up to this point in their lives, even though every teacher thought they were getting them ready for the next year, has not been so fabulous. But now we don't have to say to the little red cap student, pay attention, this will really help you next spring when you get an English 101. We can say instead, this will really help you with the paper you're writing this weekend in English 101. So it makes it embeds the developmental work right in the credit level work. So what results do we get from this? Well, let's take a look at some data. We're going to use that same pipeline diagram. The top of this screen is the data for the student. All the data is for students from 2007 to 2010. The top of the screen is for students who were in the traditional standalone developmental writing class. And during that 4-year period, there were over 5,000 students in that group. These data, by the way, were produced by the Community College Research Center, a study done by Cho, Kopko, and Jenkins. You can see their names at the bottom of the screen. And that study is available on the CCRC website if you wanted to, if you're a glutton for data. So over 5,000 students started in the traditional English 052. 65% of them passed. That's a little higher than the date than in this. This study, by the way, was done from 07 to 2010. And that's a little better than the 57% we saw back in 1993. And then for the ALP students, there was a much smaller group. We were just running a pilot, and there were 592 of them, of whom 82% passed, 18% didn't. So we were happy with that. Our pass rate for the ALP course was an impressive improvement over the traditional course. But then the next step was where we really wanted, I hope to see a difference. Look again at the ones who dropped out, 17%. Next, please, Elizabeth. 17% of the traditional students never signed up for English 101. They passed the developmental course. That's actually 1 percentage point higher than it was in 1993. And of course, you can see at the bottom of the screen, if you'll click again, 0% dropped out in ALP. It looks like, wow, we must have been fantastic teachers, but of course that was not why they didn't drop out. They didn't drop out because they couldn't. It was a trick. We shortened the pipeline that they had to move through. They were taking the developmental work simultaneously, concurrently, with English 101. They had to sign up for both, and they had to stay in both for the whole semester. So it would be impossible for a student to pass English 052 and not even attempt English 101. But how about the final data? How does that look? Go ahead, next again, and one more time. Yeah, so the final data, you can see our pass rate in 2007 to 2010 was still 33% for the traditional students, just what it was back in the 90s. But for ALP, the pass rate is 74%. When we saw that figure, we were stunned. We thought we'd made a mistake, that we must have run the data wrong. It couldn't possibly have. It's more than double. Doubling 33% would be 66. But this is just was an unbelievable pass rate. And that was the sort of breakthrough for ALP. Once we had those data, we had a lot easier time convincing our administration to let us scale up this program, convincing the advisors that it was a good idea to advise students, and convincing students that they should take ALP. But one of the little nagging questions that people kept raising, and even we who were teaching in the program were raising it, is maybe we were cutting those students some slack. Maybe they were actually, we talked about all that bonding with the students in those small sections. Maybe we were passing students who weren't really quite ready to pass. And so we're trying to answer the question, were the students who passed in the ALP model really ready for English 102? And now you can see for the traditional students, only 13% ever attempted English 102. For the ALP students, that was 50%. Now, I should say that a lot of our certificate programs don't require English 102, so the percentages have gone way down, but it's a much higher percentage for the ALP students than it is for the traditional students. And how about the pass rate? You can see 10% of the traditional students ever passed English 102, and more than 3 times as many, 33% of the ALP students. So apparently, if we were passing them we were cutting them some slack and passing students who weren't really ready for English 102, we wouldn't be seeing these kinds of results. So once we knew that they were doing well in English 102, we stopped worrying that we might be passing students who shouldn't have passed. But we also wondered, how do they do in the rest of their college studies? Are they getting credits in other courses? And as you can see on this chart, the number of students who earn 12 or more credits within a year of passing their developmental course is down. 20% is the highest it has been for students in the traditional program, and the ALP students have been in the 30% range every semester that we've gathered data for. So not only is the doubling of the success rate in writing courses, but it's doubling their success rate in business courses or psychology courses or math courses. They're staying in college and they're being successful in college at about double the rate if they go through ALP. And after 2 years, with the number that get 24 credits, if you go ahead and click through those, is equally impressive. Again, they're just about doubling. Except for 2011, doubling the number of students who accumulate 24 college credits within 2 years. And the next chart, and you can see here, we don't have a lot of students who've completed yet, but nevertheless, with the exception of 2008, we've doubled the completion rates every semester for comparing students who go through ALP with students who go through the traditional developmental program. We also were interested in answering the question, okay, it works in Baltimore, but how will it work in other kinds of community colleges? So on this chart, Achieving the Dream did a study for us in which they looked at 7 different community colleges that were doing ALP around the country. Some were large, some were small, urban, small town, suburban, rural, all geographically spread. And as you can see from this chart, for the most part, they've achieved similarly, in some cases, even better results than we did at CCBC. Next chart. So I wanted to talk for just a minute about other options. And one of the things that people are sometimes confused about, what is ALP and is it a co-rec model? What is a co-rec model? Are the two terms the same thing? So let me start by explaining that a co-rec model of developmental writing or of any developmental program is one in which the developmental course is taken as a co-requisite for the credit course and not a prerequisite. It's taken at the same time, in the same semester as the credit course. And so there are a range of co-requisite models. We've been talking about ALP in this presentation. As far as I know, ALP is the most robust of the co-rec models that I'm familiar with. The least robust would be something like this. You go ahead and put your developmental students into English 101 and then tell them, okay, go down to the computer lab and work on my comp lab, or go to the writing center and see a tutor if you need any help. That's the least robust version, and I'm not recommending that. But you can see in this chart, there are a lot of other models. The compressed model, where students sign up for a section that meets for 6 hours a day for one semester, in which they do both their developmental coursework and their credit coursework, or studio model where they go to a 1-credit studio. There are ALP courses that only meet 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week instead of 3. There's the triangle model. If you'll click one more time, Elizabeth. The triangle model, which is a really interesting but very hard administratively, logistically model. So let me just talk about a couple of these. Let's start with ALP again. And what I want to do is show you what we have figured out to be the reasons why ALP has been so successful. First, the students are in English 101. They're not being prevented from getting to English 101. They're actually in the English 101 class so that they feel like they really are college students. They really are college material. Then there's the cohort effect. Those 10 students spending 6 hours a week together, half the time in a small section, they really do get to know each other. They help each other. They email each other. They give each other rides to school. They give each other advice about what they missed the last class period and so forth. So the cohort effect, we think. The small class size, it may be the most important of these factors, but having just 10 students in a class really changes the dynamic. The instructor gets to know them. The instructor has the time and the opportunity to work with 1 or 2 students on the problems they're having while the other 8 are doing something else. There's also the fact that the 2 classes are closely coordinated. Everything we're doing in the developmental class is supporting. It's either preparing students for what they're going to do next in the credit course, or it's reinforcing what they just finished going over in the credit course. And then in our developmental course, we consciously pay attention to those non-cognitive issues. We talk to students about their life problems. We talk to them about their affective issues. We talk to them about stress and ways to deal with it, and time management, and solutions to problems if they're having issues with healthcare for their children and so forth. And so we think that keeps them in college. We think the fact that they are in a class with 101 level students, I guess what I would say is this factor really addresses the stigmatization that goes with being placed in a developmental course, or as our students usually call it, a remedial course. They're in a college level course, and they no longer feel that they're sort of being ostracized from the real college and kept in a holding pattern until they prove they can do it. They're doing it. They're in a 101 level course, and in a 101 level course where there are 101 level students to serve as role models, both in terms of writing and in terms of how to do college, how to ask for help when you need it, how to use WebCT, how to find your way around the library or even to the library. So being in a class with 101 level students is one of the strengths of ALP. We've developed over the 10 years we've been doing ALP what we call a progressive pedagogy. And I'm not going to go into much detail about it here, but it's only possible because we've worked so hard at figuring out how to address the kinds of problems these students have. So it involves a lot of active learning, integrated reading and writing. It certainly involves a more progressive approach to sentence level error, an emphasis on thinking skills, and of course the addressing of those non-cognitive issues. And 8th, the model is scalable. I mean, one of the reasons that it has been so successful is that once we discovered how well it worked, we were able to scale it up so that we are now we don't offer any of the old traditional standalone. We're 100% ALP at the Community College Baltimore County. And finally, we have enough time, because we're meeting 6 hours a week, to include both integrated reading and addressing non-cognitive issues, both of which we would never have been able to squeeze in to a more traditional approach. So those 9 reasons are why we think ALP has been so successful. Now let's just pick a couple of these less robust models. We'll try the Writing Center approach. I copied the 9 features that seem to contribute to our success over under Writing Centers. And now if you'll just click a couple times, Elizabeth, I want to show you the ones that we lose. We don't get the cohort effect, because students are not working. Stop right there if you would for a minute. We don't get the cohort effect because students go to the Writing Center as individuals. They don't go as a cohort. We don't get the cohort unless you have a really well-trained Writing Center where the tutors really know what's going on in every section of English 101. You just don't get the kind of coordination you get when the developmental work is being done by the same instructor as is teaching the English 101. Most tutors in Writing Centers have no preparation to address non-cognitive issues. Of course, most of our faculty in English didn't either, but that's one of the things we worked hard on in faculty development. The progressive pedagogy that we use in the classroom in ALP isn't possible in a Writing Center. And number 9, if you go to a Writing Center for a 20 or 30-minute appointment, there's not enough time to also address reading, integrated reading and writing, and non-cognitive issues. Let's take a look at another one, the compressed class. That's where students take 20 students take a course that's a combination of English 101 and the developmental course with one instructor, but there are no 101 level students in it. There's no smaller class size. The class is just the full class size. There's no attention to non-cognitive issues. The developmental students are not in a class with 101 level students. And so those are the three factor, notice we're doing a little better than we were with writing centers. And let's look at one more. Let's just look at those 1 and 2 hour versions. And what I would say about them is the only thing that you really lose is time. Otherwise, they're the same model as the CCBC version of ALP. But and so that I barely have enough time to do everything in 3 hours a week. I would have a hard time including the integrated reading and writing and the non-cognitive issues if we only met 2 hours or much less 1 hour a week. So there's a quick overview of some other options. I don't know how interested you are in the cost, but I think we ought to take a quick look. One more click, please. One of the things that's obvious is that the cost of offering a course or a model where one of the sections only has 10 students is going to be twice as expensive. We calculated the cost in terms of faculty salaries for taking students through the developmental writing class in English 101 in the traditional model versus ALP, and it's a little more than twice as expensive in ALP. But the thing that we discovered is, and now this next part I'm going to talk about is only true in Maryland because of the way our funding is structured by the state, but it's similar in most states. We get revenue from tuition. Students pay tuition for every credit they take, and so because more students are making it through the pipeline and taking English 101, it means we're getting more tuition from them. So that's $840,000 a year versus $621,000 for the traditional model. We also get FTE compensation from the state that's based on the amount of, it's 60% of tuition. So that's also larger for ALP. And so now if we go to the bottom line, even though the cost is higher for ALP, the amount of revenue the school gets is even higher. And therefore the difference is in the ALP model, is $936,000 versus $805,000. So the school actually makes money on ALP, even though we have that small class size. And when we discovered that, it sort of eliminated all of our administration's concerns about, can we really afford to do this? Can we really afford to scale it up? It actually is less expensive than to do ALP because you have such higher success rates. Last slide. So that's a quick run through of the ALP program. I just wanted to mention that we have a website with a lot more information and actually another videotape of me giving this same lecture, only not talking quite so fast. And you can get to that if you'll just Google ALP, it'll take you to it. So I hope that answered some questions for you and gives you an idea of why ALP is such a promising new model for the delivery of developmental writing. Thank you.